This video is part of a full podcast, link in the description for the full podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe and turn that notification bell on. Enjoy the video. I think it's time to move on to the one that is going to cause some issues. A combined Arsenal/Spurs 11. Now, the best way to do this is to go position by position, and obviously the person who gets the most players into the final team will win the combined 11. I guess it's fair to say. We'll do the manager as well, because I think that's only fair to the manager. However, it's only fair to start off with the goalkeepers. Now, Liam, which goalkeeper do you want to put forward for Arsenal to probably get into the team? I think it's fair to say.
I mean, realistically, both of them have a lot more pedigree than Spurs goalkeepers right now. I mean, but I think for argument's sake, the one that's been in it longer, we'd have to say Aaron Ramsdale.
Okay, so Spurs news. Do you want to argue with Aaron Ramsdale as the goalkeeper, or are you going to lie down and accept that one?
Never going to lie down and accept. Never. I think Ramsdale might be one of the most overrated goalkeepers in the league. Seriously, this guy is the biggest camera keeper I have ever seen. He's always making sure he's getting his Instagram shots for after the game or his Twitter photos. This guy, literally, the ball could come straight in his face and he's still jumping to the side and sticking a hand out. He's just all over the shop. Don't get me wrong, made a few good saves, but he's a big old camera keeper. David Raya I can't really bring into the conversation because I think we previously mentioned he's only really played 2 games. And Vicario, the Spurs goalkeeper, came in this season with pretty low expectations. Nobody really knew what he was about, but he's proved himself in these first 5 games. I had doubts about him, and I'll happily admit that I was wrong there. Vicario's been top class for us. I wouldn't say he's put a single foot wrong yet. None of the goals for errors or anything like that. More importantly, our manager hasn't thought about subbing us off in the 60th minute, so I could say he's pretty confident in Vicario there.
It's a good argument for Vicario. However, longevity, the bloke has played 5 games. And
he has, yeah. But how many Instagram shots has he got in that time? Not as many.
Shall we have a look?
I mean, yeah, I was going to say, you talked about David Raya only playing 2 games than you previously.
Yeah.
You could start talking about Vicario, who's played 5 games.
You may have done yourself in there. I am.
If we're basing it off this season, I'm saying Vicario. If we're basing it off of longevity in the Prem, I would happily say Raya, because Raya is a good keeper. But if we're basing it off this season, I'm going Vicario.
I think I do have to go Ramsdale, simply because.
I mean, if he wants Raya, I'm happy to have Raya, to be honest. I think if that's more of a... if that suits him better.
He won't take Raya instead, will he? Because he still wears red on his chest. If you want to go for Raya, we can go for Raya instead. But I think either way, sadly, simply because Vicario hasn't shown himself to even be a top keeper for long enough, I think I will have to give the point to Arsenal. But I'm happy to go with whichever keeper you want.
If we're losing on this and we're not going Vicario, I'd much rather Raya than Ramsdale. Okay,
we will have Raya. To be fair, I'm not surprised he said that, because he has only played 2 games, so he probably doesn't quite have red running through his body yet. That is how blood works.
He also rejected Spurs. He also rejected Spurs to come to Arsenal. So
Spurs never put a bid in for him properly, so he never rejected us.
Sure. Whatever, let's just sleep at night, man.
All right, lads.
Brentford said 40 mil and we walked off.
and they got him for 30. Potato.
Well, we actually got him on loan, really, but
Well, yeah, 30. We'll move on to left back. Now, I think there could be a debate to be had at left back. I'm going to presume the left backs are Zinchenko and Udogie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Who wants to go first on this one? Spurs news, you can go first on this one, because we let Liam have pick his goalkeeper, which didn't even end up getting in, to be fair. Why do you think Udogie is better than Zinchenko?
Look, Udogie came in this year. It's his first year in the Premier League, despite us buying him last year. Loaned him straight back to his club in Italy. I think it was Udinese.
Yes.
He's hit the ground running. There's been a breath of fresh air there. He was brought in with the thought that he was going to play sort of a left wing back role when Conte was there, but he's come into a Postecoglou system that doesn't use that 5 back, so he's slotted in straight at left back. And look, he's been top class, a brilliant left back, and he's still only 20 years old. He's great entertainment to watch. He's just sort of he seems comfortable in the Premier League. He's one of those players, and there's not many of them that come in and just immediately look really good. So he's a top one for the future. He's probably one of those players that if he was English and at City, everyone would be raving about. But yeah, he looks like a great one from the future and doesn't cry after he misplaces a couple of passes.
I do like Udogie. I do think Udogie is a very, very good player. Why should Zinchenko get into this team over Udogie then, Liam? Because I think that is a very good argument, and I must say, yeah, he does cry a lot less. I'm fed up of seeing Zinchenko cry at this point.
Well, I mean, if you're suggesting that Zinchenko crying over his country being invaded is a problem, then I think there's another separate discussion.
Not
here,
just over that.
We said no cancel culture. No.
That's
getting Daniel cancelled. That might not do me well. I'm thinking the point might go to Spurs here.
Not doing yourself in
but I tell you what, no, Zinchenko, look, he is a fantastic player, and there's a reason he has managed to play for Premier League winning sides for the past 4 or 5 seasons. He's got 4 or 5 Premier League trophies under his belt. He's absolutely fantastic. You saw the way when he came in last season, he just transformed the way we play, coming into midfield and dictating play. He's so good, and he's one of the biggest reasons why we were so close to challenging Manchester City. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't get the feeling that Udogie's going to be blasting Spurs into a title challenge this season. And I think Zinchenko had that impact for us, so I think that is a big reason why I'd have him in the team. And also, not only what he brings on the ball, but just his leadership skills as well. He's a huge character on the pitch. He has a big impact in that dressing room, and I think he's a really top player, and there's no way I'd be replacing him for some player who's played 5 games in the Premier League.
I must say, I wrote Udogie down about a minute ago. I think you didn't do yourself any favours, Liam. You did.
I think that's a little bit of bias coming in there, Daniel.
I think I do think Udogie is the better player. I've looked at what Zinchenko has done, and I'm not that convinced. Look,
feels like incredible short-term bias in my opinion, but
I've appreciated Udogie's class for a little while now.
Watched plenty of you.
Yeah, he's been.
Yeah, I watched like 5 minutes of highlight reels of Udogie last season. Thank you.
Fair enough.
And I rate him really highly on those 5 minutes.
I tell you what, if I'm going to lose out to someone in the Spurs team, Udogie he's a good player.
He is a good player, so I think we'll take that one. We'll move on to the centre backs now. Do I want to do left centre back, right centre back? Not really. I mean, what 2 centre backs would you both put forward? I'm coming into this with an idea of what the centre back pairing might be. However, I'm open to be changed. We'll start with Liam. Liam, do you want to argue your 2 centre backs who you would choose here?
I mean, for me, it's simple. Saliba and Gabriel.
Okay.
I think they were a fantastic partnership last season. Unfortunately, when Saliba wasn't fit, you saw a huge difference in the way we played. And I think it was more not from a defensive point of view, but the way we played out from the back when we lost him. But I mean, Saliba for sure has to be in this team. He's one of the best centre backs in the world. At the age of, I think he's still 21. He's very young, and he's fantastic. He's a Rolls Royce, really. He's brilliant. Almost no one can touch him defensively. He is so good. I genuinely, I could just sit here and wax superlatives.
I think it's fair to say Saliba was in, and I don't think Spurs News will have any qualms with Saliba being in this side.
And I think Gabriel as well is a very underrated defender outside of Arsenal. I think he was widely considered for a few months to be a lot he actually performed better than Saliba, but I think because the media preferred to talk about Saliba because I'm not really sure. I think Gabriel's a slightly less easy on the eye to watch.
Mm-hmm.
He's very physical and probably a little bit less elegant than Saliba, but very good defender. And certainly, when it comes to Spurs defenders, I can't say I know much about Mickey Mouse or whatever his name is. And then Christian Romero, I just don't really rate at all. Really, I mean, he's got quality, but I think he's so rash. I just think he's very unreliable. I mean, we saw that Gabriel was somewhat like that in his past. Maybe it's to do with having the right base, the right centre back next to him. But personally, I can't see how any Tottenham defender comes in here.
Okay, Spurs news. You've got one centre back spot to argue for here, because I think, as I say, Saliba is into this. I'm going to presume you're going to argue the case for Romero to get in, but you might go Van de Ven. You might also go for Eric Dyer. I mean, if you decide to go for that one, then good luck. But which centre back do you think should be partnering Saliba in the side, and why do you think they're better than Gabriel?
Yeah, I think I need to wish myself luck for Eric Dyer's case. Jesus. Just going to the left centre back quick. I will say Saliba, because Saliba, look, he's a fantastic young player, good centre back. Been unlucky with injuries, which is a shame for him, but good for Tottenham as a whole, I guess. But look, he's a top player. Van de Ven, again, another top young centre back coming in from Germany. One of the quickest players in the league last season, and quickest defender by far as well at Bayern Munich. In the Bundesliga, sorry. But I just think that Saliba currently has proved himself a bit more. He's had that extra season or two under his belt. And Van de Ven, come the end of the season, I'll be arguing his case all the way, but for now I'd say Saliba. Moving on to the right centre-back, Gabriel, I can't see him getting anywhere near this team. There's a reason why he's made his international debut, I think, about 2 weeks ago. And even though he's nearly, 26, Christian Romero has won a World Cup. He helped that defence get to the final. And look, at the end of the day, there's a reason why Lionel Messi has been quoted calling him the best centre-back in the world, and that's because he is a top-tier centre-back. So he gets in that team ahead of Gabriel for me.
Ooh, I'm not sure, boys. That's a difficult one. Saliba, obviously.
Are you going to disagree with Lionel Messi talking about a player? I'm not sure.
Lionel Messi is the GOAT. Liam, what's your response to that one?
Well, I mean, Messi can't exactly be labelled as the most truthful person. He came out saying that PSG didn't support him after the World Cup, even though he got an ovation at the training session afterwards. So, I mean, he's a bit of a waffler, to be honest, this guy. He's a fantastic player, but, don't trust his mouth.
I was going Gabriel, but I think that statement simply there, Romero is into the team. Sorry, Gabriel, if you're listening. If you drop me a message, I'll happily overturn the decision. As I say, it doesn't take much. 5 run a podcast appearance, and I'll say they're the best centre back in the world. But I think for now, we're going to have to go with Romero, and that moves us on very nicely into the right back position. Who are you guys going for? And state your cases. We'll start with Spurs news on this one.
So I've got a couple of options here. Jed Spence, who's played about 2 minutes for Spurs in his entire career.
And is
Emerson Royale.
Is Spence on loan?
Leeds on loan now. Yeah. You got Emerson as well, but the one I'll put forward is Pedro Porro, signed from Sporting last January, in the transfer window right at the end. Look, he didn't have the greatest start with Spurs, but he's definitely picked up a lot, and he's proved that he can play sort of that right back role. Going forward, he's a brilliant player. He could even be used on the wing, which some fans have been asking for, which I can't see happening, but I can see why sort of they're looking at it. And Postecoglou saying playing that sort of similar tactics to Pep, where you bring them fullbacks inside, or inverted fullbacks as they're called now, and he's sort of doing really well in that role, and he's got that quick pace to recover if he has to track back for whatever reason. Pops up with a goal every now and then as well, so can't complain with him. So Porro's going ahead for me.
Okay, so Porro for Spurs. And Liam, who do you have in as the Arsenal representative?
I mean, I'll obviously have Ben White, but I mean, on Pedro Porro, there's a reason Spurs fans are saying that they want to play him at right wing is because he can't believe defends. So, he's very Nuno Tavares
Can Ben White
vibes in
attack?
terms of that. And Ben
I
White
think I saw a clip of
absolutely attack.
Ben White the other day. Didn't Arsenal post a video of him losing the ball and then just kicking it back to the goalkeeper? And they were praising him for that. That shows Ben White's level, really.
He's a centre back.
I honestly have no idea what clip you're talking about, but I mean, he came in at right back last season and was absolutely fantastic going forward as well. He's a real threat. He overlaps Bukayo Saka. But from a defensive point of view, I mean, you can't have a right back that can't actually defend. Pedro Porro, I remember, 6-1 at Newcastle. He was an absolute disaster.
He's putting out the big guns.
Genuinely terrible. I couldn't believe it. Like, he just wouldn't check his shoulder at all. It's like he just purposely did not want to defend. Whereas, Ben White, he's been absolutely brilliant, It's a disgrace that he doesn't get into the England squad, and I think there's clearly something...
There's a reason he doesn't get into the
motivation
England squad.
to that. No, I mean, he was in the World Cup squad, and he obviously left for some reasons other than football, but he is...
Because he couldn't
fantastic.
play it. I got a genuine question though. Genuine question now though, no comedy. Is Ben White actually a right back? Because I seem to remember at Leeds he was always playing centre back. Why is he playing right back?
He's playing right back because he's been absolutely brilliant since he's went in there. Genuinely, he's been fantastic. If you've watched Arsenal games, you know he's been absolutely great. He can do exactly what's needed of him. He can play. He can play inverted next to the midfielder. He can overlap. He can defend. He can attack. He can do it all. And Pedro Porro can.
He can lose the ball and kick it into no man's land.
Pedro Porro can't bloody check over his shoulder, mate. He's got 180-degree vision.
I'm loving the little jibes you two have for one another because the hatred runs so deep and it's absolutely hilarious. I've got no idea who I'm going to choose it because both those arguments.
Oh, come on, Pedro Porro, for God's sake.
One of them.
Ben White. What?
One of them can't attack and one of them's a centre back.
I was going to say, one of them's not even a right back. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, but...
What do you mean one's not a right back? One of them's a bloody right winger playing right.
Yeah, Pedro is a right wing back as well, so
he's adapted well. He's adapted well to the Postecoglou system.
Listen, what's happened is he's not good enough to be a winger, so he's been put at full back, and he can't defend. So...
Either whoever I choose here, the other one is absolutely going to hate me.
The defending isn't as important in the Postecoglou system. That's why it's good going forward.
If you think the best managers in the league would pick Pedro Porro at right back over Ben White, you're absolutely having a laugh.
That's why Arteta isn't the best manager in the Premier League.
I have made a decision, and because of the style of football that Arsenal play and how that right back can slot into the centre back system to play the famous elbow, as me and Liam have spoke about before, I am sadly going to have to pick Ben White on this occasion.
Come on.
That's criminal. So what you're saying, Daniel, is your knowledge is up there with sort of Gareth Southgate and picking him for the England squad.
Look, I think Ben White is a difficult one because neither of them are top class right backs. I think both of you will agree that you could upgrade in that area for both the sides.
Would your mind have changed if I brought Emerson to the table?
Absolutely not. Let's not take the piss here.
I do love his dance moves and Instagram previews, to be fair. He's a quality entertainer.
I love it.
I do love that he does no background research into his Instagram stories. And that if I wanted to, I could pull up a clip of you slating him and saying he needs to leave the club. But
never.
Yes,
Never.
do you want me to? So yes, no, I will reluctantly pick Ben White on that one. But we will move into the midfield and into the defensive midfield position where, again, Spurs news, you might be up against it because we've got Declan Rice in this one, Liam. He's quite good, isn't he?
Yeah, he's all right, No, obviously he's fantastic, and I think coming into a team where his responsibility is now slightly lessened, at West Ham, it was pretty much just give the ball to Declan Rice and hope he bloody wins us the game. Since he's came into Arsenal, what he's had to do in this system has, it's probably a little bit more complicated than what he was asked to do at West Ham, but a lot more specific.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can just see how much quality he has. You know, from a defensive point of view, he's tracking back, his timing of his challenges, his positioning is fantastic. But then also on the ball, he's just so good at moving the ball across the pitch, you know, receiving from the defenders, getting it out to the wide players, and dribbling with the ball as well. Obviously, I think it was more of a feature of his game for West Ham when you saw him driving out of defence, because, I mean, we're not really in a defensive position for the most part of our games. But yeah, he's been absolutely brilliant, and you know, he's made Partey look not that good. You know, I mean Partey is a very good midfielder, to be honest, but he's also not available when you need him to be. And Declan Rice is like, he is the perfect.
Because he's normally in prison. That's why.
Boy, allegations, man. Allegations.
Yeah,
allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly, massively.
Oh my word!
But Spurs needs to even want to argue with Declan Rice here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who do you want to argue with?
Basuma. He's been a different player this season, different gravy for us. Look, last season, Conte, I don't know what he was doing with his life.
Again, if we're speaking about allegations.
Yeah, but there was no official statements having to be put out by like Met Police and that, so I don't have to worry about that. Allegations at the end of the day. But look, Basuma for us this season has been really, really good. He won Man of the Match in his first two games for us against Brentford and United, I believe. And he did that for a reason. He was a top signing from Brighton. Shame about a couple of injuries he picked up last year. And Conte ball as a whole was pretty much dreadful. So he's been a different player for us this year. Feels like a new signing. And again, you've got to bring certain aspects into it. Declan Rice cost, 100 million, 110 million, something like that. Basuma was about 25 from Brighton. So you have to factor that into it, value for money. Is Declan Rice worth 110 million? I'm not sure if he is. For me, he's a good player, but he doesn't get enough goals or assists for the sort of player he is. So Basuma, for me, he's been top for Tottenham this season. Probably, I'd say, our second best player, maybe third behind Maddison or Son. So for me, he goes in that team ahead of Rice.
Is Basuma a proper DM?
I think he's adapted to that role really well. That's where he plays for us. He sits in that DM role, so I'd say, yeah, he is.
I'm not sure what number 6 is judged on their goals and assists. You don't hear Sergio Busquets, you know, how many goals does Sergio Busquets score every season. So, I mean, I don't think that's really...
Yeah, but who pays 110 million for a holding midfielder?
Yeah, but
and once again, that's still not relevant when you're talking about behind 11. It's who's better than the other.
But you have to factor that in. You have to factor that in.
You really don't. It's who's the better player.
Well, you're talking about value for money. Value for money. Basuma wins that all day.
I mean,
this isn't combined 11 of best value for money. You know,
if it was, Basuma would go in. However,
yeah, that's fair.
The reasoning is, even with Spurs spending 20-25 million on Basuma, if they would have been in that competition to get Rice, which was they weren't. It was the summer before and all that. They wouldn't have spent that extra money elsewhere, and the squad leave would have gone great. That's 8 million from your back pocket. Thank you very much. For me, it's not even what they've currently done for the clubs, because both of them, Basuma obviously did have last year for Spurs, but obviously that wasn't something that you probably want me to take into account for this. I'm going to have to give this to Declan Rice.
English bias again.
I mean, Basuma barely kicked a fucking football last season. Don't see how he could get in.
I'm going to have to give this one to Declan Rice. I think he is a very, very good footballer. And, I mean, if you want to talk about English bias, I'm sure when we reach the attacking midfielder area, the English bias may or may not play a factor. But for now, I'm going to have to go for Declan Rice, and on that we'll move into the centre mid position in what is probably one of the longest videos to ever be released on the channel. But we're continuing to strive forward onto the centre midfielder position. Which player do each of you want to put forward for your respective sides?
Well, I mean, it depends. Are you saying so we've got one midfielder and then one attacking midfielder?
Yes.
I was going to say, I think I've included 2 cams, if that's possible.
Can you make one of them a centre midfielder?
Yeah, I think I mean I'd be in the same boat really. So
What
I mean,
about two attacking
I think
midfielders for each of you?
yeah,
Odegaard and
it's just
Maddison
the
are
two
both
eights,
different
two
gravy,
teams.
man.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm honestly happy to not really have a huge debate if we're just going to put both of those two.
Same here. Odegaard is top notch.
Yeah, I wasn't going to argue with Odegaard, and while James Maddison I would be happy to give advice to in certain areas of life, aka stay off Twitter or X, I am more than happy to pull up your Twitter, James. Actually, oh no, I do still have the app.
I'm sure Spurs fans will say the same after his tweets about Gareth Bale.
When he was about 17 or whatever.
Yeah, I think we've got something on him as a 25-year-old that still makes him look like a 17-year-old. If we scroll back far enough, not that I'm holding a grudge, I am. And I scroll back and I see the tweet that goes along the lines of rubbish. Watch and analyse the game properly and stop writing headlines like that, which makes fans pile on with negativity. Play like that and we'll be absolutely fine. Created numerous brilliant chances and won comfortably on another day. Well, James, we won't. So I am putting you in this team, but stay off Twitter. Moving on to the left wing position. Now, this is going to be a difficult one because we have two of the best left wingers in the league. If not the two best left wingers in the league, I would. Yeah, they're the two best left wingers in the league, aren't they, lads? I can't think of anybody who.
Yeah, I'd probably say they are.
Tips the two.
Maybe Grealish on his day, but
I still think he's better as an attacking midfielder. So I do.
It also depends what you define Marcus Rashford as, really. But.
So, oh god, right, this is gonna be difficult. Spurs news. We'll start with you. Why should Heung-min Son, on the presumption we're going from, you never know, you might fancy a little Welsh lad, Brennan Johnson. Why should Heung-min Son get into this side?
Sonny's probably the best Asian player to ever grace the game. He's a top player internationally as well. He's been their captain for some time now. Look, he's a Golden Boot winner a couple of seasons ago for a reason, consistently pumping out the goals. He's just a top all-round player, can play anywhere really across that front three. You saw against Burnley, he played in that striker position and bagged a hat-trick, which helped us to that 5-2 win there at Turf Moor. But he's just such a quality player and he's shown that for so many years. I think this is his 8th season in the Premier League now. And he's consistently just been top of his game. I've got no bad words to say about him. He's our new captain for a reason. He's a leader at Spurs and someone that probably the youth kids will look up to. So I don't think there's any argument there that Sonny is just the better left winger there.
Mm-hmm. It's a difficult one because they are both in different stages of their career. However, I'm willing to hear out the Martinelli case. Why should Martinelli make this team over Son? Because I'm really torn because comparing a player who, if anything's possibly just left the prime of his career to a player who hasn't even entered it yet.
Well, I mean, Martinelli is absolutely on the rise, and what a player he was last season. I think it was really underreported how good he was, really. I think probably because the main guy who was, helping us on our title chase was Saka, obviously being an English winger, young English winger. Obviously that's going to make the headlines, but I think Martinelli had a fantastic season. He 15 non-penalty goals from a wide position is just unreal. Obviously Son will know something about non-penalty goals from his past, but I mean he also did sort of just disappear last season. I think when Spurs were absolutely in the mud, and he just seemed to sit in there with them. So I think it shows a lot about when the team's not performing, he's not lifting them up. And Martinelli, during our worst period last season, when we were really struggling, we had those draws against Southampton, West Ham. He was our best player over that period. He was the one scoring goals and getting us back into it. But yeah, he's a top player. He scores goals, he gets assists. Very all-rounded player. Brings a lot from a defensive point of view as well. The way he defends, the way he presses. He supports our fullbacks really well, especially because we've got Zinchenko on that left hand side. He's not great defensively. and does need support at times, and he really does help and provide that.
It's a compelling argument.
I think Martinelli he's entering the right stage of his career where Son is starting to drop off.
Absolutely, and I'm not going to disagree with that at all. However, it's a really, really difficult one, this one, because you've got two top players in front of you. Prior to this, I have mentioned the longevity of these players, and that is somewhere where Martinelli does lack. Son has been there for years doing it for Spurs, and because of that, and you've got to look at the backgrounds. Martinelli, Brazilian lad. Son. Who have you ever heard who's played football in South Korea?
Exactly.
But bar Kim Min Jae.
He's breaking the mould over there.
Bar Kim Min Jae.
Yeah, Kim Min Jae as well. Yeah.
There's not many. So, and I am looking at this and it's very red dominated, so I wouldn't mind to get some white in there. I'm going to give this one to Young Min Son.
Yeah, I mean, I can deal with that. It's okay. Son's a good player.
Yeah, he is. And we'll move from there over to the right wing. Now, there was another reason I wanted to give this to Son, because I'm not quite sure if Kulusevski and Solomon combined are better than Saka.
There's no real competition, really, is there? I mean, Kulusevski had a very good 6 months when he first came in on loan, and since then he's not really had. He
does have a really good chant though, so you do have to put that forward.
Yeah, I mean that is valid. But obviously Saka's just top. He's one of the best wingers in the world at his age, and he's only going to get better. So I don't really think I actually need to put an argument forward if Spurs News wants to argue Man or Solomon or Kulusevski for Saka.
Do you want to, or I mean, the word sack is already down on my team sheet, so it just needs an A to be added.
Yeah, look, Liam put it up there. If you'd asked me for Kulu's first 6 months at the club, I probably still would have said Kulusevski then, just because he was top tier, and unlike other players, he hit the ground running coming into the Premier League, was bagging goals, assists, scoring against City, and I think was his debut or his first start for the club. But last season, he did sort of fall off a lot like the rest of the players at Spurs with Conte ball. So, Saka is different grade. He's a great player. It's still really shocking to me that he somehow started off as a left back or a right back. I can't remember. A bit like Gareth Bale-esque. But he's a great player. Great player.
There we go. And then last but not least, we do have the striker. Before we do actually have to decide the manager. So the striker for this team, you've got Gabriel Jesus, we've got Richarlison, two Brazilian lads. Spurs News, Richarlison.
Yeah, so Richie is Brazil's number 9 and has been for the last couple of years for a reason. He's a great player on his day. I think recently, I know he hasn't been all that, but he has said in interviews and stuff that he sort of needs help psychologically. So maybe there's something going on mentally there, which is sort of an explanation for his poor form. But look, he came on against Sheffield United, literally won us the game single-handedly. He was only on for 10, 15 minutes. He scored and assisted, all with that pressure on his back. Of his sort of poor international form recently, and I really do think he's going to bounce back. And look, if you come back to his time at Everton, he was probably their main man, and half the time wasn't even playing at striker, despite being their top goal scorer, because I think Calvert-Lewin was normally up there. So for me, Richie goes in solely for the fact he is Brazil's number 9. He's trusted at that level, and he's proved many times he could do it. Yeah, he's hitting a rough patch at the moment, but I'd still take Richie as my striker.
Okay, and then Jesus. Why Jesus?
Well, I mean, Richarlison scored more offside goals last season than real goals.
True.
Maybe he scored. I think he scored one Premier League goal last season, and then even then that ended up being in a defeat at home to Bournemouth. Some people can beat Bournemouth in the final minutes, some can't. But You know, on Gabriel Jesus, you know, I mean, he's a player that's discredited for his lack of finishing because, I mean, that's all you can really say against him because the rest of his game is so good. But even then, he scored about 11 or 12 goals last season in the league. And that's without considering he was out for about 3 months. Obviously, during the World Cup, some of that. But, I mean, he missed a lot of football. In a few months there, he was still getting back to fitness. So I don't think there is a real argument, you know. I mean, obviously, if Kane was still here, he'd get into this team willy-nilly because he's one of the best Premier League strikers ever. But I mean, Richarlison, if he'd shown a little bit more form, you know, if we were talking about his Everton days, maybe he has a conversation here. And I mean, obviously, he does okay for Brazil, but I mean, Gabriel Jesus is quite clearly the better player.
However, this is a really tough one. These two sides are very evenly matched in a lot of areas. But who do I trust more? Myself or the Brazilian manager himself? It's not me. So, I will be giving this one to a lad who only cost 50 million.
Oh my word!
And it's Richarlison.
I'm sorry. How he scored 1 Premier League goal last season? You're putting him ahead of
Jesus
Gabriel Jesus.
isn't.
He scored more Champions League goals last season than your club in the last 10 years. So we'll take that.
Jesus isn't particularly star-studded either.
Oh my word!
Personally,
this is an outrageously poor opinion.
There was gonna be one.
Outrageous.
And who says I'm not just doing it for the comments?
Yeah, actually, I could have looked at that. Yeah, clickbait title, of course.
But I will be giving this one to Richarlison. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 players from Tottenham Hotspur and 7 players from Arsenal. So
7? How do you get 7? I got 5 from Spurs.
Udogie, Romero,
Udogie.
Maddison. Oh, sorry, 5 from Spurs, 6 from Arsenal. Sorry.
Yeah, hang on a minute.
I mean, we all know it's really 4 and 4.
Never.
It's 6-5. However, Arsenal have just taken on. However, there is still a chance for Tottenham to come back here because the managers. Who is the better manager out of Ange Postecoglou and Mikel Arteta? Liam, we'll come to you first. Why is Arteta better than the lad who was born somewhere near you-ish, kind of?
Well, listen, if you're going to judge Postecoglou after 5 games in the Premier League and winning trophies in the Scottish League...
The Scottish League is a prestigious league because Brendan Rodgers can win games there.
Steven Gerrard won a trophy there, and we all know that Steven Gerrard is absolutely terrible manager. So I don't think his trophies really at Celtic can mean anything. I mean, he looks like a decent coach, but I mean, Mikel Arteta has proven himself in the league. He's won the FA Cup, he's won the Community Shield. I mean, obviously it's a Community Shield, it's not... He's won a couple of Community Shields. There's still more trophies than Spurs can say they've won in recent years. But, you know, he's also brought Arsenal very close to a title. He's improved their squad. They're a top team. They've had one of the best points differentials that Arsenal have ever had in the league. Probably more than Spurs have ever got in the league. I can't actually confirm that, but you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really an argument here. Arteta coached a fantastic team last season, and Postecoglou's barely started his top managerial career. So I mean, it has to be Arteta, really.
Okay, Spurs news.
Yes, I mean Arteta is a pretty decent manager, but at the end of the day, he is just a whiny little sod, and he complains about everything all the time. Whereas Big Ange is like the dad you never had sort of thing. So, look, he's proved he can do it. I know it was only the Scottish League and the J League. He also managed the Australian national team, I think, and he won the Asian Cup or something similar over there. I'm not sure the specific name, but Ange is one of those sort of managers that you want. He's someone you'd run for a brick wall for. Yes, he's only had 5 games, but he proves his tactics and his way of sort of looking around football works in the Premier League. And obviously Sunday, the North London derby will probably be his biggest test of the season.
Yes.
Away as well so far. So look, and everyone loves him. I think even Liam could admit that he seems like a top bloke to come to the Premier League. First Australian to manage in the Premier League as well. So it shows that he's come from a small upbringing, only being in Japan 3-4 years ago to being in the Prem now. It's a great rise to fame. So, yeah, look, it's simply a case of, do you want someone who calls you mate every 5 minutes, or a whiny little sod nagging at your side every 5 minutes?
Right. I'm going to have to pick the whiny little sod.
What? Oh my God.
Right.
That might be the most outrageous comment of the night.
Your argument was, he's just a great bloke, so he should be the bitter manager of this team.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Right.
I can't argue tactics. He's only had 5 games.
Exactly.
What is that for an opinion?
Give it a year or two.
Mate.
Give it. He's turning into Ange himself.
Exactly. He can't help it. He knows he's better.
Mate.
Give it.
He still can't help it.
Mate.
Give it a year or two, and I'd be willing to give Postecoglou time because he needs more to prove himself. 5 games versus statistically the easiest Premier League start is not enough to outdo a manager who, while he might whine a lot, is an innovator because he considers substituting goalkeepers off, and did also come second in the Premier League last year. Turned around an Arsenal side who were abysmal, it's worth saying. And I know it took
They
him
were,
time.
but when you get 600 mil or whatever he spent, 600, 700 mil, you're going to expect some sort of change, aren't
they needed it. Look at the players who were there to start with.
It's literally a brand new squad.
Wasn't Per Mertesacker still there, for God's sake? The bloke who...
I mean, I'd love to say he was, but I mean, that might be a little bit further in the past. But I mean, we had Socrates and Steffi, Kolasinac, Lichtsteiner. That's 4 players in the defence. You know, Bellerin, Maitland-Niles, Torreira.
God.
Just so much waffle in that team. Ozil, Alba, Lacazette. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I've got to give this one to Arteta. I like Postecoglou and I think he's going to do good things, but he needs a bit more time. And just because he's a top bloke, that doesn't make him a better manager, sadly. You know,
Yes, it does.
I love my dad to pieces. Doesn't mean he'll be the best Premier League manager to ever, grace the earth. So, on that note, I will be giving it to Arteta